I like there to be something a little zany, because that's, to me, what makes Eurovision the most fun. And in a weird way, more accessible. Like, almost the weirder it is, the more people really want to latch onto it.
Hello and welcome to the EuroWhat, episode 234, dropping on June 4th, 2024. We are a pair of Americans trying to make sense of the Eurovision Song Contest. I'm Mike McCall, and I'm here with my co-host, Ben Smith. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Mike.
In this episode, we'll be talking about Eurovision, fashion, and stagewear with our special guests from Go Fug Yourself, Heather Cox and Jessica Morgan. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us on this. This has been a topic that I've been wanting to dive into, I think, since we started this show in 2018. But this feels like the first year where we've really had the opportunity to really examine fashion at Eurovision. So
Excellent.
It's been a very maximalist Eurovision year. So a lot of looks to talk about.
Yes. I think we've got a lot of rich fodder.
How did each of you get introduced to Eurovision? Heather, why don't we start with you?
Well, funnily enough, I think I'm the one that sort of dragged Jessica into it. I grew up in the UK, so I lived there from 1983 to 1990. And I would watch Eurovision over there. And I remember it being a really big deal. Like, they would have a thing on Terry Wogan's nighttime talk show where they would present all of the potential contenders and people would sort of pick the UK's entry. And I would watch it. And I remember I was telling my husband, I was like, I'm pretty sure when I was younger, they would get to the national representative and they would read out who they gave every point to. It really, really dragged on after a while. And so I would record it and kind of fast forward through some of that stuff. But we would get really into it. I vividly remember when the Bobby Sox won in, I think, 1985. I think they were Norway. And I watched for sure when Celine Dion won. So it was something that was like a cherished part of my youth, even if I didn't ever really totally connect with any of whatever the political like backstories might have been at the time or the procedures or whatever. It was just this goofy, glorified sort of talent show. When we left, I sort of lost track of it. And then occasionally bits and bobs would drift over from across the pond, like, you know, the existence of Jedward, for example.
Yes.
Yes.
Inescapable.
The
Jedward.
cheeky chappies from Ireland. Yes. And so, but I kind of lost track of it. And then when we were working on Go Fug Yourself, which is our celebrity fashion website, you know, every so often come May, Getty Images, a folder would pop up. And I believe the first year we covered it, as you will probably understand, was when Lordi won. And we were like, oh, these monster men won. That's right. This thing is crazy. And I was like, I feel like we have to start documenting the weirdness of Eurovision because people don't know. Like, we're missing it. And it's just only grown from there.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of how I came to it. I do vaguely, I might honestly, let me preface this by saying I might be making this up. But I think when Heather went on her honeymoon, she came back and she was like, Jessica, we need to talk about Lordi. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Do you remember this at all?
I don't, but it sounds like something I would say.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys were like bored in Tahiti watching Eurovision or like, I don't know what was going on. Anyway, but Lordi sticks with the person. And so that was kind of my first, I mean, I'd heard of it because as a ABBA fan, you kind of know about Eurovision. But then, you know, it really did take me reading all of Heather's recaps of it on the site for me to kind of really get into it. And so I am much newer to it than she is. And, you know, I do think it is definitely taking off in America much more over the last 5 years. Like, we've definitely got friends who are very into it, who I think 5 years ago were not paying any attention. I have a very good friend who attended Eurovision a couple years ago, which I think 5 years ago, he would have been like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So yeah, I came to it, you know, word of mouth. Like, she hand sold it to me the way they say in the booksellers world. She hand sold me Eurovision.
My work here is done.
Yes, doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm trying, man.
The Lordi's work.
The Lordi's work.
The Lordi, yeah, there we go. There we go.
It's right there, too.
But yeah, like, no, like the last 5 years, like, it's become incredibly easier. Just the fact that Peacock is showing it now.
Yes.
And like, you don't have to preface this with, do you know how to use a VPN?
Yes,
exactly.
And I think it was on Logo maybe for a year or two before that. I can't remember, but obviously Peacock is a bit more widespread just because it has NBC's backing. And I love that they have it on there because then you can archive it, you can watch it because it is a commitment. The last couple of years, I've tried to be a bit better about watching the semifinals and not just waltzing in at the final and, not caring about who got eliminated. And it is, you sit down for me, it's noon. And it's like, it's 3 hours that day. It's 3 hours another day. It's a bunch of hours on the Saturday of the grand final. And it's a lot, but especially when you don't have a viewing party, when you are in fact the only person in your house who really cares about it. But I'm sort of enjoying the fact that, Twitter really does start to light up now. And it's not just tweets from other countries. It's like actual Americans who are like, oh no, my Eurovision party. I have to start my party.
The time zone advantage, I think, is the biggest selling point for Eurovision.
Big time. I mean, when we were
Hugely.
watching, and I can't remember exactly what time it was because I was sort of in and out this year because I had some family stuff, and just sort of looking at my watch and being like, this is going to run really late for everybody who's actually over there. Like, I wanted to try to go this year, and unfortunately, I tried this year and I tried last year, and I just I wasn't quick enough. It sold out immediately, but the flights, the hotels all sold out. But I was like, yeah, no, I would be real tired. I might be too old.
When it was in Baku back in 2012, I think the show, because of the time zone, the show has to start 9 p.m. Central European time. I think it started at midnight. And I just think
God.
I think of the Russian grannies, and I think they were pretty late in the lineup.
Oh my God, the bread baking Russian
2
grannies. You can't do that to them. Yeah.
just them and Engelbert Humperdinck. Just can you just stick them first? This is they need to go to bed.
Maybe they could take a nap though. Maybe they took a disco nap while the rest of it was happening to be fresh.
They were making bread. They were ready. They just sort of stayed on a different time zone, and for them, maybe it was lunchtime.
Yeah.
Who knows?
One of the events that I find kind of weird about Eurovision is the Turquoise Carpet, opening ceremony piece of it. And I've followed your coverage of that the last few years. And I guess my question is, can somebody explain it to me? Why is it? It just feels like it's one more thing.
It does feel like it's one more thing. And when I was looking at going, I was taking a look at the number of shows that they do. And there's an enormous number of shows they do beyond those 3 that I just listed. They do a separate jury show before the grand final. So the national juries have actually watched the whole show already before the broadcast even starts. And there's rehearsals, and there's a family show. And there's all of this. So they have so much stuff to do that week. If I had to guess, and I am guessing, I would say it's sort of just like a kickoff party. And it's a way of introducing some of these people to everyone in a way that maybe they hadn't accessed before. Like if you've heard the songs, but you've only seen the polished videos, it's sort of like you're getting a sense of what the costumes are going to be. Because I remember, I want to say last year, I don't want to butcher the band name, but Finland, Cha Cha Cha, they did their whole thing with the weird, I keep wanting to call it a human centipede, and I don't know what it is. The weird chain of people where he's riding on top of everybody in his jacket. They did that on the Turquoise Carpet, and I was like, okay, I guess spoiler, because that's kind of what they do in the show. But I was assuming it's publicity. I'm assuming it's a way of making all of these acts feel more accessible and sort of building rooting value. Well, I don't know. I'm sure they all serve a lot of cocktails and make a lot of memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone loves a red carpet, right? I do think there are a lot of other events that are not premiere specific or film specific that do kind of do an quote unquote opening ceremony these days, leaving aside the actual obvious Olympic opening ceremonies. But in tennis, a lot of times they do stuff like this. They'll do a kickoff party or a closing party. And I do think it is, like Heather said, just another way to get press. The more interesting photos you have out there, the greater likelihood there is that someone at People Magazine is like, oh God, I got to post something. Okay, look at this. We're going to cover this Eurovision party. I mean, I just think that more content is always better for something like this.
Especially if there are sponsors to please, there's always the financial aspect of it.
That does make a lot of sense.
The last few years in particular, it feels like it's been a fun opportunity for the artists to kind of get one more looking, because I'm thinking about Poland, not this year, but at last year's Turquoise Carpet in Liverpool, where she had the gigantic green Beba dress of just sort of, I'm in on the joke.
You got to stand out, right?
Yeah. Or just thinking about how Windows 95 Man and crew arrived this year in the denim version of the Lady Gaga egg.
Amazing. Oh my God. Those people's commitment to denim is something that should be saluted, is my feeling.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys.
Well, and then Sweden showed up, and I'm just oh, that's stolen valor from the Finnish people.
Yeah.
That is their brand this year.
That's true. That's fair.
So what were some of your favorite looks from this year's contest?
I got kind of a kick out of Poland. My whole thing for Eurovision outfits is I like them to be weird.
Yes.
I really like them to lean into the camp. I find that you know, unless your song is just like really good and you really do only need to just stand there in a dress with a wind machine and like kill it. If you're Adele or whatever, like great, go with God. But I feel like I like there to be something a little zany, because that's to me what makes Eurovision the most fun. And in a weird way, more accessible. Like almost the weirder it is, the more people really want to latch onto it. I was likening it in my head to when I try to describe the soap opera Passions to people. And you can say what happened on a given 3 weeks of Passions. Like, oh, well, there was the shed and you weren't supposed to know it was in the shed. And then Liz lit the hate candles and it was telling her not to look in the shed and the magical candle. And you're like, well, that show sounds amazing. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of was. And like, it's like that with Eurovision. Like, I want the equivalent of the shed and the hate candles put on Eurovision. Like, I had so much more fun describing Windows 95 Man, for example, than trying to remember what, you know, Ukraine's thing did. I think she was maybe like, looked like she was on a rock or something. Like, I just couldn't really remember that stuff. And when you have that many acts across the whole thing, you do kind of need a shtick. You need a good song, but you need something that is really going to stick on people. Obviously, that doesn't always work, but I think for the most part, especially with the importance now of the viewer vote, it really does. So I enjoyed Poland. I was sad for her because her whole chess theme or whatever the heck that was with the red and the white and the black kings and the towers, where she ended up on the tower with the red king. I kind of enjoyed that. Obviously, Windows 95 Man and his heavenly jorts descending from the sky will live, as they say, rent-free in my head forever. Bambi Thug and the demon doing ballet. That was pretty cool. I'm trying to remember if there were any other like more straightforward outfits that were just good outfits, and probably not. Baby Lasagna was pretty good. I liked his sleeves. And I thought that was a good example of someone who wore something noteworthy and a little unusual, but not in a way that totally stepped all over whatever the fun of the song. Because I think what was really working for them with that song was how catchy the refrain was and how they had a lot of social media play with people sort of reciting it and doing the dance. They did a video outside the American Embassy in Croatia, I think, where they were all doing the song and the dance. So I thought he kind of threaded that needle pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling always is, and again, I'm coming to this much more recently, I sort of feel like in an ideal world, Eurovision costumes would sort of be related to, an ideal world for me, would kind of be like, do you guys ever watch Miss Universe?
Yes.
So, you know, there's the parade of nations and the women show up and they have to dress like their most like iconic national items. So like Miss America shows up in, you know, a sparkly Statue of Liberty. There's something about it where I'm like, look, I have so many references here. Like, sometimes you guys look like figure skaters. Sometimes you like Bambi Thug looks like my sleep paralysis demon, and that's cool. That's like a real take. There is something about it where like Croatia was wearing, it was partially like a costume that's like culturally significant, right? I kind of like the idea of taking something that feels, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I kind of wish more people like leaned into their country and just really blinged it out for the people they're representing. Like,
yeah,
the British guys, I felt looked very dull. In fact, one of my very good British friends texted me and all it says was, I don't support the UK. Like, all it said right now. And I'm like, you guys, you have a lot. Like, show up in a sparkly Union Jack, wear Ginger Spice's iconic Union Jack mini dresses. Like, go for it. Like, yeah. I think there's so many opportunities here and so many people do take them, which I appreciate, but I think it could be even bigger. That's that's my take.
And that one made no sense to me because the whole thing just looked sort of dirty.
What are you guys doing?
They were in a dirty bathroom and they were dressed as boxers. And then I don't know. That didn't work for me at all. I liked Armenia. I thought Armenia did a good job of what Jessica's talking about, where they kind of leaned into something that was culturally significant for them. And I thought that the song was fun. Like, there is an element to Eurovision that's really fun when they're not all singing in English and you kind of want to learn something. You want to feel like that you are actually watching and enjoying something that isn't exactly like you could get if you turned on XM radio, which is interesting because obviously some of these songs do make their way onto XM radio. I always give a couple extra points in my heart to the ones who, like the Russian grannies, you know?
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. And I realized you asked us favorite outfits and I just immediately started complaining and giving notes about something. But I will say,
you guys, that's our brand.
It's what we do too.
Yeah, all right, good. So we're all in good fun. But I did love Windows 95, man. Like, that use of that iconic logo that I feel like I mean, I have a Mac. I haven't seen that logo in 25 years, it feels like. I was like, this is, not to sound like my grandma, a hoot. It was a hoot. It's so funny to me. It's like so ridiculous. It's creative. it's also like, in a sense, not all of it, obviously, but like the shirt, his t-shirt is so banal. It's like beautifully banal. It's so funny. Like, I just think you're going to remember that. Like, I think that is one of the performances where, like Heather was talking about, if you had to describe Eurovision, what Eurovision was this year, you would talk about that entire experience. Like, you would be like, okay, let me tell you what happened here. Let me tell you what this guy was wearing. And that, I think, is to be applauded.
The holy jorts.
Exactly.
I do like the idea, like, at least for like the little flag parade that they've been opening the show with, is like, it should be like a moment like when all the athletes enter during the Olympics of just like, you are dressed like your flag or like a national symbol or something.
Let's do it. Let's more. I know people rarely say Eurovision needs to be more, but I say more.
More. I'm always complaining about that. I'm like, I want more actual fire. Actually, it begins and ends with more actual fire.
Well, and if nothing else, just like a standard flag size for every participant walking out.
Yes,
Because like Ollie Alexander walking out there with the largest UK flag we've ever seen. Right. And then other nations will just have like the small one that you can get at like the airport.
Well, this is why I feel like you look to Miss Universe, because I think those women get a very big packet that's like, here are your rules. Be very creative, but it has to be within a little subset so this feels organized.
Yes. Because I think it's a song contest, but is it? Like, the visuals and all of the camp to me is so important. And yeah, sure, like, write a good song, but like, you really need all these other elements.
You need more fire.
I remember being really cranky when Duncan Lawrence won with Arcade, because whatever, it's a good song, but if I remember correctly, he did very little on stage, and I sort of was touchy about that because I felt like he didn't come correct. He didn't do his homework. But what do I know? Because that song is everywhere now. And interestingly enough, you hear it all over the place, and I don't think people know it's a Eurovision song. They just think it's a pop song. But I was really sort of disappointed. I felt like that shouldn't have counted.
We've talked about looks that we enjoyed this year. Were there any looks from this year in particular that didn't work for you? In that same sort of Duncan Lawrence, like, no, you guys know where you're at, right?
Ollie Alexander at least tried something. Mm-hmm. But I think for the most part, there were a couple even songs and performances and stuff. Like, I came out of the semifinals being a little like, is this a boring year? And then when I watched the grand final, I was like, oh no, this was better than I remembered. But for whatever reason, like, I thought Sweden was boring. Like, I thought Germany was boring. And like, there were a couple of them that had stuff going on, but just it didn't work for me. I thought, Latvia. He had a great voice, but he just was sort of wearing a suit, if I remember right. And there was like a tube on the stage, and sometimes he walked through it, and you were like, but that's what is this? And you could tell the crowd was not into it either. They seemed really, I've never really felt lukewarm when he was done, and you don't usually hear that.
The crowd was going mild during Latvia.
Well, like, a suit.
Absolutely were.
It's your vision. Why are you wearing a suit?
And I was like, he's got a beautiful voice, but if you could just do something on that, that's when you're sort of like, okay, Latvia is just happy to be here, does not want to host next year, more than happy to come in last if need be. Like, it's fine. I think he was probably my obvious least favorite, just because I thought the whole thing just fell flat. Just try something.
I can see that. I know you guys love Poland, but I think my note is, she looks so much like Lady Gaga to me. And I was like, this is too Lady Gaga. Like, I think you have to either go full Gaga, and I mean like spangly leotard, like fake horns, like someone did come in an egg, I guess, but like full Gaga, or you need to like really fight your own Gaga-ness. Like, I'm like, I feel like this is too, it's not her fault that she looks like Lady Gaga, but I think either lean all the way in or lean all the way out. That's kind of my feeling.
Poland in particular really did feel like it was trying to go both ways on that. I mean, because there were, Ben, you mentioned like there were like 3 costume reveals in the course of the first verse.
Yes. Which I appreciate, but I get why it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Right, but if you're going to do that, like, space them out throughout the song so we can savor them and appreciate them.
Yes. You need to time this. Like, this seems crazy. You're like, let's pace this.
It felt like overcompensating for the fact that she didn't really have it with the song itself. And so she's like, I got to distract people with a lot of stuff.
That's where fire comes in, Heather.
That's where fire comes in. You need to hit the balance. Slovenia was another one that was very Gaga because she had the super naked catsuit.
Yeah.
And all the like the writhing people in like flesh tone bodysuits, which felt a little more Gaga-y, but somehow watching it, I was like, I'm watching an orgy, but I'm bored.
Yeah.
I feel like that should not be possible.
Yeah. I feel like the bored orgy vibe sometimes veers a little like, oh, this is like a MTV music video awards performance that somebody got told they had to like tone it down a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Where like in rehearsals, they were like, I don't know about this.
And I didn't love Iceland. I'm trying to see who else I'm like all the ones from the semifinals that got cut. I feel like Denmark's been kind of blah lately.
Denmark, I thought was very boring. Like you could wear that outfit to a wedding.
Yeah. I was mixed on France. I didn't hate the song, and I thought he sang it pretty well. And I thought the thing where he stepped away from the mic but still sort of projected it to the room was a good reminder that people can do that. But I don't really remember the out. And then at one point he was crawling, and I was like, I don't really understand the story you're telling here at all. And I think they've been so much stronger in previous years that I was like, oh, I really wanted to be there with you. But like I was a little distracted by the fact that you're just kind of wearing I think it was a white mesh shirt or something, and it I didn't know why he was crawling around in it. Like, if you're going to do that, wear a tracksuit.
Exactly. We're solidifying.
And obviously, Georgia's song being called Firefighter, I was like, listen, if nothing else, if you're going to be mediocre, you got to have some shirtless firefighters. Like, let's just go literal.
It's right there. It's in the name.
It's right there,
literal.
Noosa.
Yes.
It's right there.
Like the things you could do with hoses.
Heather.
The UK a few years ago sent James Newman with Embers, and there was originally like no pyro in that performance. It's just like, what are you doing?
It's called Embers. Hello.
It's called Embers. It's called Firefighter. Where are the firefighters, Noosa?
Literalism, especially with fire, is welcome at Eurovision. Like, I really feel like it should be a requirement. But, you know, what do I know? What do I know? I've never performed at Eurovision.
Not
But
yet,
if I
Heather.
did, I would light that thing aflame.
Yes. Pyro everywhere.
Yes. Maybe at the expense of actually singing. I would just go around and just be me and a flamethrower. I think I'd win.
There have been performances that have used that strategy more at the national final level than at Eurovision.
I do kind of wish the national finals got a little more, like, if Peacock really wanted to lean into this, it would be kind of fun to see like Norway's national, if I think they do a national final, maybe.
Yes.
No, they don't all. But I vaguely remember Give That Wolf a Banana had to win a national final, and I would have loved to have seen
Yes. Who went up
was
against
competing
that?
with the Wolves. Because I think that can also be really informative.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that Melfest hasn't been brought over. I mean, granted, it's conducted entirely in Swedish, so maybe that's why Peacock is kind of resistant to it. But I mean, it's from the same producers who did American Song Contest, so they have a relationship.
Did you guys watch that at all? I really was like, maybe I'll watch it. And I just couldn't do it. I felt like it was kind of like the Great American Baking Show, where I was like, somehow when you bring the thing over and you try to make it about us, it doesn't translate at all.
We slowly lost our sanity as like two of the only people watching that from front to back.
Yeah. Oh my God. I bet you did.
Bless you.
I do think Americans, like with stuff like that, we are very, and I think in all ways, susceptible to the accent. My friend, the one who did not support the UK, my British friend Eliza, she goes, "You'd be surprised what I can get away with just with this British accent." And I was like, I would not be surprised. I totally believe you. And I think Bake Off is, of course, charming and wonderful, and it's right. But I do think for Americans, some of it is like, we just like listening to you guys talk about soggy bottoms or whatever.
Yeah.
Regular old Americans talk about that. Bleh.
I love seeing sort of the weird things that pass as humor in other countries, which probably are funny, but I'm only understanding part of it. Or, you know, I felt sorry for Petra having to do most of it in English, even though she speaks good English, obviously. Like, it was, you know, it can't be easy to do a show that in a language that's not your native language. But I always find all of that stuff and the performers they bring on and just the sort of sense of humor they bring to it is really interesting. I got a kick out of the whole number in the semifinals that she did about why Sweden keeps winning, and it's because they just love Eurovision so much, and it's not their fault. Don't be mad at them. I thought that was cute.
It is cute. It was cute.
But yeah, there is something like, I just find it so like globally informative, and I think trying to make it like a domestic thing in the States, like it just can't compare, and it didn't.
Do we have to take over everything? It's like
Does everything have to be about us?
No.
I mean, I guess so, but no. In this instance, I think let's just not, you guys.
Like, Australia getting to join was enough, I think.
Yeah, we should not be involved.
Like, who would we even send? Would we cheat and be like, we've got this artist, Kelly Clarkson? Like, you might have heard of her.
Yeah, would it be like in the Olympics when we send the dream team and the basketball team just like kills everybody. Like we can't, like when we send like a professional amateur, Kelly Clarkson, like she came from a reality television. Yeah, we can't do this.
If we ever tried to do that, I think we would be the new UK. We would be the 0 points every time.
Yeah, totally.
We would
correctly.
do it once. We would not win. We would be mad about it. We would never come back.
Yeah.
Literally, exactly.
Right?
We hate this. We didn't want to do it, and we're not doing it again.
Yeah.
People might vote for us once if they thought that we would host it in Las Vegas, I think.
That's true.
But like, if we didn't, like, that's a risk. You take that risk. And if we didn't, I think they would regret it. But otherwise, I think it would literally be like 0 points every time.
Yep.
Fair.
We would try to host it in the Sphere.
Oh.
That's
Well,
kind of a great
you're onto
idea, though.
something.
See, this is how we get ourselves in trouble. We're like, this is terrible. We need to step off, and then we're like, oh, okay, except for wait, maybe we shouldn't step off. This is a genius idea.
Maybe when Australia someday wins, we can offer to guest host because it's closer.
Yeah. It's halfway.
It's
inconvenient for everybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
We can meet in the middle.
Yeah, it'll be fine, you guys.
One thing that I found interesting this year, and like this mainly comes from being somebody who's paying attention to not just the semifinals, but also the rehearsals, is it felt like nations were trying different outfits. Because like Italy, what they ended up wearing in their final performance was completely different from what they had been testing out in their rehearsals. And similarly, Nemo, who won this year, had a completely different jacket.
Oh, and like the furry boots, right? Yeah.
I like what they ended up with because it felt a little bit more Muppety in a good way.
Yeah.
The other one, I just think of Chris March on Project Runway trying to do his final collection with like the
God.
stuff that was made out of hair. And there's just something in the back of one's brain that just when you see a jacket made of hair, it's just like, this is wrong. No.
It's really interesting to think of them having that much backup stuff available to them. I guess that makes sense. I guess it would.
How much of that do you think is literally logistical for them, where they'll come off and be like, I felt really uncomfortable in that. I don't think it read well on camera. Like, do you think it's just possible that it's sincerely like a dress rehearsal and they realized, I don't think this plays?
Oh yeah, totally. I think a lot of it is like you are building everything up until those 2 weeks in May when rehearsals kick off, and you want to see, okay, but like how does this actually look on camera? We think this is great. Like once we have this and all the props and all the camera angles and everything else, does this look good? Is this comfortable? Does this work for the performer in the way it needs to work?
See, they need to send you guys to Eurovision. The nebulous to cover all of this stuff, because these are the logistics that people want.
Yes, let's manifest that.
I agree with you. I liked better what they ended up wearing for the final.
I kind of like what Angelina Mango from Italy was doing beforehand. Like all of like the shiny black, glittery black stuff kind of got lost in the stage when it finally got there. Versus like the rehearsal outfits were very much like playing on, like there was like that crown of thorns almost in the background and this was really playing on that.
Yeah, I like that better. I don't know. I'm curious as to what the logic was there. Although I have to say, as much as I think her name is fantastic, I don't remember anything about her song at all. So maybe that's also part of it. But maybe it could have gone differently if they'd made a different choice.
My galaxy brain, there's no actual basis for this, is that Italy does very well. Like having watched Sanremo, they have 26 songs and all of them are fantastic. And I was just like, how do you guys actually sort these out? Because these are all great. You have like 10 different options. Mm-hmm. Like Italy won recently with Måneskin. When Italy got out of the way and just let them perform, and there are many years where like they will put a little bit too much stuff in the staging or just have things that feel like a little bit off, where I'm just like, I wonder if they're just like, we want to do well because we have a legacy of doing well, but we don't want to win. So like, let's swap the outfits out.
I'm always sort of surprised when one of the automatic entry countries wins. Because I think there's some resentment about the fact that there are countries that don't have to compete in the semifinals in a real way. But Italy seems to do pretty well with that. And yeah, I think there's always got to be something in the calculus that's like, well, we don't want to host it again. Apparently Ireland doesn't feel that way, or maybe they did. And they were like, we gave you Jedward again. You did it again. How much more Jedward do you want? But I think that has to play into it a little bit. Like there's no way that a country can afford to do this that many times unless they're maybe Italy.
Yeah.
So yeah, you probably do want to pair it. But wouldn't you feel terrible if you were Angelina Mango and you're like, oh, I'm the one they're sending because they don't want to win. It's like the movie, the Eurovision movie. She's Fire Saga.
Yeah. Another one where, again, there's like no real proof of this, but like one thing that I feel like was nice to see this year in response to Kárja doing really well and having like a very strong visual statement is that it feels like the quality of like the men's stagewear this year, there's actual interesting stuff happening. Like, yes, we did have Latvia doing like the all blue. But you also had the Netherlands with the extended shoulders. You had Azerbaijan trying with with their outfits.
You did. And I think some of the credit for that probably also goes to Måneskin just because they were so memorable. But I agree, it wasn't just Duncan Lawrence or, Victor Crone or whatever just coming out in like a suit and staring into the camera. And I thought Croatia did probably the best job of that for me. I thought I was really pulling for them, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm. Croatia just like we'd said earlier, just like taking national dress and making it very rock and roll, just like nailed the brief.
Yes, I think they took a good lesson from last year's Croatian act, Let 3, which I have a real soft spot for, and it does come up on my playlist in my car sometimes, even though I had to translate it to understand half of what they were saying, and I have to sing it phonetically, and it's a mess. But like there was so much going on in that song and in the performance, and I think people probably not understanding why all of a sudden they were like tractor and like where that was coming from. And so I feel like they sort of took the lessons from what I think they probably thought was going to do better because it was so weird. And they're like, okay, let's pair it. They like paired it back in all the right ways, but still it was catchy and still it was visually interesting and it had personality. Like I thought it was going to be their year, and it almost was. It was for the viewers for sure. Oh well. Not that I begrudge Switzerland. They were adorable. I'm okay with that. It was a very peppy song. Switzerland is who you vote for when you're like, neutrality wins. Everyone's going to be chill next year.
So this is a question, and like I wrote it in our show notes, sort of like an SAT prompt, so I apologize. But it was, so just kind of thinking about like how Eurovision music is not your top tier pop music. Like there's always this kind of like less than aura about it. When it comes to the fashion and costumes at Eurovision, does it also kind of fall into that second tier, or is Eurovision successful on a fashion level?
So you can't really compare it to anything else. We write a lot on our day jobs about celebrity red carpet fashion. And I think Eurovision, for me, really exists in its own little sphere. I don't think we expect people to show up wearing Balenciaga or whatever. You know what I mean? I think that would be kind of against the vibe. Like, I don't think that's really the ethos of Eurovision. And in a sense, it's kind of like, for me, it's like, this is like performance wear. It is very specific. There's a lot of fire happening, ideally. And so you can't, I mean, I wouldn't call it second tier. I would call it its own little silo. Like it is its own thing. Like figure skating costumes are their own thing. You would never compare a figure skater's costume to like something a person would wear to the Oscars. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, right. And it's not like, it's definitely not, to me, fashion, capital F fashion. It's not the Met Gala. It's a whole other, it's its own universe. Would you agree with that, Heather?
I do. It's what people wear to perform at the Grammys versus what they wear to arrive at the Grammys. And I think that's fine. I think it should be. And especially because of some of the things that they have to do. Like, you know, even looking at Switzerland from this year, you know, they were wearing sneakers that looked sort of like 1980s thick athletic sneakers with some flowers stuck to them or whatever. But they had to stand on a satellite dish and like tip forward.
Exactly.
You need some grip. Yeah. So, you know, all of those decisions have to come into play, and even changing their costumes at the last minute, the stuff they have to accomplish in them. I mean, there was one year where, oh God, who was it? They had, the backup dancers had stretchy jackets or something, and they were able to get in a position where they stretched it around the lead singer. So it looked like the lead singer was coming in by boat. I want to say that was like 2012, 2013, somewhere around there.
Turkey 2012.
Turkey, thank you. And so you're sort of like, these are functional in their own way rather than fashion. And I think they all have to be that a little bit. And I'm sure there's an element of trying to toe the line. You definitely get some women for sure who come out and it's a sparkly gown. But how often do they do well? You know what I mean? Like, how often does that really connect with people in the same way as it does when Kate Miller comes out in a giant gown and you think, well, what's this? And then she starts singing opera and you realize she's on a pole and she's bending back and forth and you just can't see the pole because it's under her skirt. And you're like, now that is a good use of a gown. Or, you know, I think times that they've had long skirts where the person is standing up and the skirt is long, they project stuff on the skirt. Like, all of that stuff, to me, the showmanship of it is so much more important than, you know, whether it's on trend or whether it's who made it or any of that stuff. I mean, I do sort of feel like Eurovision costume designers should get their due.
For sure. Yes. But it's just its own
a different category
thing. Yeah.
Now, having said that, do I want Law Roach to costume some of Eurovision someday? Maybe. I feel like he's the celebrity stylist out there right now who would have the wildest idea of how to pull that off. But like, why interfere with a good thing? Most of them kind of are getting it. And I do, again, wonder how much the increasing importance of the viewer vote is going to be impacting that over time, just in terms of the outlandishness that people go for, because they just sort of know that people have a natural fondness for that. So you have these national juries who are probably voting based on alliances sometimes, or political feelings sometimes, or maybe for an actual good song that they like. And then you have the people at home who are voting for, you know, who the heck knows? Probably more of them voted for a Windows 95 man than any of the national juries. So I wonder what kind of effect that will have over time on what people are wearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the most striking thing about this year. I mean, with Karia's Bolero last year, like really being the icon of last year's contest, and how much that got translated into different looks this year. I think Croatia is a great example of that. Like it is the puffy sleeves, but also tying it into that like Rammstein type sound.
Yep.
And yeah, so just reinterpreting on that rather than it just being like dance breaks or ballads versus bangers or something like that. Like it really is focusing more on the vision part than the song contest part.
Yes, which I think is great. I think, and like we've talked about, I think that tends to be the stuff that's the most successful, or at least the most memorable. Will that song cross over the way that some of the other ones do? I don't know. I always come back to was it Armenia? I can't remember what year it was. Rosa Lynn, when she had Snap 1, 2, and like the first time I heard that on radio, I was like, why do I know this? I know this song. What's it from? And finally I realized it was from Eurovision. She came in 20th. Yeah. And I remember her performance because it looked like there was like toilet paper on the walls, and I couldn't really figure out why she was in a TP'd room. But the song itself just sort of didn't transcend, and she was in like baggy pants and whatever, like she just sort of looked comfy. But you hear it out of that context on the radio and you're like, that's a song. That's a good song. That's catchy. That's in my head. But it didn't really make it. There wasn't enough going on. So I guess the fashion part of it is important because there just wasn't enough to latch onto to make people sort of delay their bathroom break. Do you know what I mean? To listen to her. You do have to take a bathroom break. Usually you do it when the hosts are talking, but sometimes you can't help it. The one that I often feel like is better than people give it credit for, and please don't hold me to this because I can't remember what it was this year, is sometimes San Marino is very entertaining.
Yes.
Nobody seems to take them seriously.
Justice for San Marino.
And the other one that I thought got robbed that one year was Malta, when it was Je me casse was the song, and I can't remember the woman's name, but she was great.
Yeah.
Had a little saxophone, and it was really good, and it got robbed. I was like, come on, you guys. Go to Malta.
That was actually one that was kind of caught up in the costume indecision piece. I mean, there was a lot of indecision that was happening with rehearsals in that entry, but like I think Destiny had a different outfit at every time that she was on stage because they just could not find the right look. And then I think what she ended up with was these kind of silver, sparkly, dangly things that like 3 other countries also had similar looks. Like Cyprus had the same sort of dress. I know at least one other contestant had the same sort of design idea there. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's a shame. So.
And when you're overthinking it that much, when you perform, you start to see that you're seeing the person go through the steps in their head, and because that's all they've been thinking about is, am I wearing the right thing? Am I whatever? And I think that's probably why she didn't win in the end. Because again, when you listen to that song just through your headphones, you're like, this is solid. Why didn't this? I mean, I think she still came in like 7th or something, but I was like, this should have done better. Why didn't it do better? And it's because, yes, the fashion piece and the visual piece, they have to dovetail on some level. They have to come together. Unless you're Duncan Lawrence, in which case, whatever. Yeah. Bitter forever.
Right there with you. I find it terminally boring. So.
Right? I'm like, fine, it sounds great at the end of an episode of Love Island, but like, whatever. That's all you want.
That's a whole other contest, honestly.
Oh, man.
Love Island credit song.
And interestingly enough, I've heard a couple of them on Love Island, so I'm like, apparently maybe the Love Island money is really all they want.
There you go.
In which case, bless you. Just don't take Eurovision with you. We need a campy winner. I think we'll get there. I feel like if maybe Croatia will go for 3 and they'll get it next year.
Yeah, they are hungry. So
yeah,
they want it badly.
They are overjoyed that they came in second. It's the best they've ever done in the contest.
Oh, my friend, I have a good friend. We text through Eurovision every year, and her husband is Croatian, and so I was getting a lot of texts from her in the lead up. she was texting me a lot of stuff from TikTok and then like on the day of the contest, there was a lot of all caps. During the national jury thing, she was like, oh my God, she was horrified. And I was like, I feel like the home viewers are going to come through for you. And they almost did, but she was really crushed for a second. So I'm glad to hear that they're happy. They get all the glory. This is kind of like when Sam Ryder won for the UK. You get all the glory, but none of the bills.
I mean, in the UK's case, they did get the bills as well.
They did.
They ended up helping
that's true.
host for...
But in the immediate, I guess that's true because they probably even knew right away. Like on the night when Ukraine won, they probably knew like, oh yeah, no, it's going to be us. So I guess that's a fair point. And that was a fun one. Liverpool was a good.
Yeah, like that was. I was there. It was a fantastic week and a half.
I bet it was
tried
great.
to go for that, and I just was always a little bit off. Like I think there were tickets I found, and in the time when I was like, don't buy the ticket until you're sure you can get a flight, and I like typed in like Expedia, the ticket's gone. Like I couldn't get there.
Tapping into like whatever group of friends knows how to get Taylor Swift tickets.
Right.
Like, like you need that level of organization.
That is the same, like that Venn diagram is a circle for sure.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, person A, you are sitting in this line. Person B, you're going to go for the family show. We're going to do this.
Well, I wonder where they'll have it in Switzerland. Certainly they got plenty of choices. Maybe I can get over there someday.
It is a wonderful experience.
It sounds like I remember being really moved by a lot of that. I mean, obviously the Liverpool one was special because there were a lot of tributes to Ukraine, but I remember I was just as moved as Graham Norton with the silly tear in his silly old eyes, as he said, when they all did You'll Never Walk Alone and they all came out. And I just was sort of like, I'm having a feeling at Eurovision. Yeah. This is so unusual for me. But like, I thought they did a really good job. And I thought Sweden did a fun job. Sweden kind of brought it back to just like silliness, I thought, in a way that we needed. I'm curious to see what Switzerland will do. Just get Hannah Waddingham over there, please, because she's really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's set a very high bar for hosting.
Very much so.
Yes, unfortunately, Malin Ackerman didn't quite get there. But that's a whole other thing.
She did improve during the week. I was very shaky on her at the beginning of the week, but it's like, oh, okay, she's doing the job. She's earning her paycheck.
It's a hard job, too. That job is not easy.
When Greece hosted, they had Maria Menounos, and you could just see in her eyes, she's just sort of like realizing what she had signed up for in real time over the course of the broadcast.
And I feel like that's kind of what Malin did early on. The one part that I feel like, for example, Maria Menounos would have been better qualified for was when they had her in the green room interviewing people at the night of the grand finale. And I was like, she does not know how to like pull. And that's not her fault.
That's a hard job, too. That's a very specific skill.
Yeah, she's not trained for that. Like, she shouldn't have had to do that. And it was weird to me that they didn't find a person in Sweden who could have done that so that she could have been up there on the stage doing, unless it's in Petra's contract that she's the only one who can talk to the national juries. They should have had her up there because it's just, and you're talking to people who aren't communicating with you in their first language either. And they're sweaty and they're excited or they're sad or they're nervous or whatever. Like there's so much going on there. You need somebody who can like tease out a bite, and she couldn't do it. And which again, that's not her job. That's not her life. That's not her life skill. I have a lot of notes and feelings about you. Go beyond the clothes.
Well, we'll just have to have you back on the show. So
Exactly.
Exactly. I need to vent my spleen as much as possible.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. This was delightful.
Yes, it was so fun.
I'm sorry that we couldn't do it as close to Eurovision because, when you're in that week, as you well know, that week and a half, it's all you're thinking about. And the songs are all that are in your head. They're all your earworms. And then for me anyway, when it's over, I make my playlist on my iPhone and that helps. But then like after a week, I'm like, what was that again? Which was that? Like it's just, it's like, it's all I can do. And then it's gone. And I guess maybe that's age. I don't know. But it's
I mean, it is an intense 2-week period. Mm-hmm. And we're just watching it. Like we're not on the stage at all. I cannot imagine what it's like to be on the other side of that.
Oh God. And to have to do the song as many times as they have to do the song. Like, they hate the song by the time. No wonder Loreen did some weirdo remix of Tattoo. I was so excited because I was like, I was watching with my mom and my husband, and I was like, you guys are going to take her song last year was pretty good, even if it shouldn't have won. I was like, it is a pretty solid song. And she got up there and was like sitting in the weird,
that was nuts,
spine chair.
What's going on there?
Writhing, and I couldn't even tell at first. I was like, is this that song? And then a couple times I would hear a line from it, and I was like, I don't know what she's doing. I feel like she's like hatching from something, but we just can't see it. Like it was really bizarre.
But Finland hatched better.
Yeah.
So.
I did love that they came back and performed during the semifinal. I was like, all right, if there's bad blood, it's calming down.
Yeah. So is there anything that you would like to plug?
If you want to read about celebrity outfits, you can go to our website, gofugyourself.com. That's F-U-G, like fugly, fug. Got to hit that G. Been doing that for 20 years, so people are like, what did you just say to me? We have a Substack that's called Drinks with Broads, on which Heather beautifully covered Eurovision this year. For the first time, we did it on the newsletter. So those are kind of our two big projects at the moment.
I know. And we've written some books. We have the most recent novels were The Royal We and The Air Affair, which are a book and a sequel, which we are very proud of and are available anywhere that sells books, I hope.
Yeah. Oh my God. Tell us if they're not, because we're going to have to make a call. But yes.
And you can find us at Fug Girls, again, all the G's in the middle, Fug Girls, on the various social media platforms of your choice.
All right, and that's going to do it for this episode of the EuroWhat. Thanks for listening. The EuroWhat podcast is hosted by Mike McComb, that's me, and Ben Smith.
That's me. If you'd like to help support the show and access a ton of bonus content, head over to patreon.com/EuroWhat.
Free access to our full archive of more than 200 episodes going all the way back to the 2018 contest can be found on our website at EuroWhat.com.
Next time on the EuroWhat, we'll start asking Host City when as we check in on Eurovision headlines.